Jonquel Jones sent a tremor through the Connecticut sun that no one saw coming. When she walked out and lifted the veil on what had been happening behind closed doors, it was as if she flipped on the lights in a room that everyone thought was already lit. But Jones' revelations weren't just a switch. They were a flare gun, sending signals to anyone who had the faintest idea of what was really happening in the Suns' locker room. The result? Panic set in. The franchise that prided itself on its unity, on its family-first culture, was suddenly exposed. It was like watching a grand, well-rehearsed performance go off script, and the audience was riveted. But before we proceed further, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. For years, the Connecticut Sun presented themselves as one of the most tightly knit teams in the NBA, a squad where every player was in sync, on the same page, and committed to the cause. The Sun didn't have a big market. They didn't have the media glitz that New York or LA enjoyed. But what they did have, they insisted, was cohesion. This was a franchise that often turned up its nose at the concept of star culture. They weren't a group of individual players, they were a unit, bound by something stronger than contracts or fame. Or so they wanted everyone to believe, and for a while they pulled it off, with Jones at the core. To understand why Jones' departure caused such a jolt, you have to appreciate what she meant to this team. Jones was more than an all-star, more than a WNBA MVP. In Connecticut, she was the pillar, the unshakable foundation that everyone trusted. Her game was elegant and brutal, like a well-oiled machine with a hidden kick. Jones could dismantle any defense in the league, float above the paint like a cloud, and then hammer down on the boards like a storm. She had that uncanny ability to make the hard things look easy and the impossible seem doable. But beyond the stats, the rebounds, and the blocks, Jones carried with her a certain unspoken weight. She was a silent leader, someone who didn't need grand speeches or flashy gestures. The Sun knew they could lean on her, depend on her quiet confidence to stabilize them when things got tough. But then she walked away. And not just quietly into the night, either. Jones made sure everyone knew why she was leaving. And what she revealed shattered any illusions that the Sun had built around themselves. This wasn't a case of a star moving on for a new challenge or better opportunity, as they often say in polished press releases. No, Jones was fed up, and she wasn't interested in sugarcoating it. There were tensions simmering under the surface, frustrations that had been allowed to grow until they spilled over. And once Jones opened the floodgates, there was no stopping the torrent. What exactly went wrong? The specifics were never neatly outlined in bullet points, but Jones hinted at a culture that felt stifling, even hypocritical. She felt sidelined, underappreciated, and worst of all, restricted. It was as if she'd been trying to stretch her wings only to find them clipped every time she tried to soar. Her relationship with the team's leadership had eroded, eaten away by miscommunications and unmet expectations. Jones didn't need to go into gritty details for people to understand. The message was loud and clear. The Sun's tight-knit image was a veneer, and once she pulled it back, everyone saw what lay underneath. The Connecticut Sun had long prided themselves on an ethos of team over everything. The idea was that no one player would ever be bigger than the team itself. The concept sounds noble on paper, but in practice, it became suffocating, especially for someone with Jones's stature. Jones was their MVP, yet there were times she felt she wasn't even their priority. It was as if she was expected to play her part and not make a fuss, to carry the team and remain invisible, to give her all but keep her voice down. The irony of it all was not lost on fans and critics alike. The very thing the Sun championed, unity and equality, was what drove their star player away. Inside the Sun's camp, there was no masking the alarm. It was one thing to lose a star player, but to have her expose the team's flaws on her way out? That was a different beast. The Sun's image was bruised, their reputation hanging by a thread. Fans were caught between loyalty to the franchise and the bitter understanding that maybe their beloved team wasn't quite what it claimed to be. And for the Suns management, this was a mess that couldn't be swept under the rug. Jonquel's departure wasn't just a loss in terms of on-court performance. It was a hit to the team's identity. How do you rebuild something that was never as solid as you thought it was? How do you regain trust when it's been publicly fractured? These were the questions facing the Sun, and they didn't have easy answers. They scrambled to regroup, to figure out how to move forward, but the panic was palpable. The illusion of stability had been shattered, and the truth is, that kind of fracture isn't easily mended. For Jones, the move was liberating. She had finally cut herself free from an environment that held her back, and you could almost sense the relief in her interviews and on social media. Here was a player who had given so much to a team, only to feel stifled and unacknowledged. Now, she could finally be herself, play her game without restrictions. The thought of Jones, unleashed and unbound, was thrilling for her fans and terrifying for her former team. She was a powerhouse before. Now, she was a powerhouse with something to prove. With Jonquel Jones' revelations hanging over them like a storm cloud, the Connecticut Sun were left in a position no franchise wants to find itself in, scrambling for stability when the ground has already shifted. The unease wasn't just felt on the court, but rippled through the fan base, the staff, and the larger WNBA community. People questioned what the Sun really stood for, what they represented, and if their team-first ethos was just an appealing tagline or something that had long worn thin under pressure. Without their MVP, the Sun's immediate future was precarious at best. A team that once built its strategy around Jones's unique skill set now had to figure out how to compete without the towering force that had held them together. She had been their go-to, their rallying point, the player who didn't just fill a role but created one. Her absence left a hole not easily patched by reshuffling or re-strategizing. For the Sun, it wasn't just a matter of finding a replacement. They were forced to reconsider their entire approach to team dynamics and leadership, grappling with whether their team over individual stance had gone too far, driving away the very talent they desperately needed. For fans, Jones' departure brought a mixture of disillusionment and sorrow. They had watched her grow within the Connecticut Sun, seen her lift the team, often single-handedly, to the edge of victory. Many remembered her early seasons with the franchise, her quiet resilience, and her gradual rise to become one of the league's most respected figures. Losing her felt personal, almost like watching a close friend move on from a situation you both know isn't healthy. Fans were torn. They wanted to support their team, but they couldn't ignore Jones's side of the story. And with her gone, they knew something vital was missing. Within the league, players and coaches were keenly aware of what this exit represented. The WNBA, with its compact roster sizes and tightly knit teams, isn't a league where players typically voice discontent publicly. Jones's move was bold, signaling to others that maybe it was time to speak up, to prioritize personal growth and fulfillment, even if it meant breaking from a familiar team. The Sun weren't just losing a star. They were setting an example for other franchises, a lesson in what happens when player voices are marginalized. In a way, Jones' departure may have been one of the most significant wake-up calls for the league, a stark reminder that talent will seek freedom and respect over any loyalty that feels hollow. The Sun would eventually adjust, as all teams do, but the scars would linger. There was no easy fix, no plug-and-play solution to replace Jones' impact. Management would have to look hard in the mirror, confronting the uncomfortable reality that they had driven away one of the WNBA's brightest stars. And for Jones, this departure marked a fresh start, an opportunity to find her voice both on and off the court in a way she'd never felt allowed before. Free from the expectations that had weighed her down in Connecticut, she could finally play her game, fully, freely, and most importantly, for herself. In the end, the Connecticut Sun were left with a choice: rebuild with a clearer vision and a renewed commitment to listening to their players, or risk fading as a franchise that couldn't retain its own. They've been exposed, not only by Jones's words but by their own limitations. And now, as the dust began to settle, the question was whether they'd rise from it stronger or be left stranded in the wake of a star they couldn't hold on to. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. We thrive on your feedback, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, keep discovering and stay tuned.